Decaf. Oh, I'm sorry, no decaf, just no caffeine. I drink tea, no caffeine.
Green
Herbal
tea.
tea, no green tea, nothing.
So how do we decode that, my man?
uh, Transparently, had a panic attack in 2017 when I was working with Damon John from Shark Tank. That was the last time I drank coffee. I I've been scared ever since. It's pretty crazy. It's actually so crazy that in the moment I could tell the entire story. I actually ended up walking home from Times Square to my house in Queens. It's not a close walk, to say the
How long of a
least.
walk is that then?
I mean, it was definitely over an hour. You know, it's I my Apple Watch told me I did like 35,000 steps that day. It scared the shit out of me because I was just like the first time I ever really experienced a panic attack, and me not knowing it was a panic attack scared me even more. I thought I was dying, and lo and behold, I just said, you know what? If that's my sign to never drink coffee again, because I was very excessive with it, like that specific day, I just said I'm good off that. Like I'm good, and I've been good ever since. I didn't need it, so I'm natural. My energy's natural. You know.
I feel you, man. Like we can talk a lot about that too, because I feel like a panic attack. I actually talked about it on the podcast. Me having one, late 2020, just being around the wrong energy, wrong vibes, wrong people, and this one night, late at night, boom, panic attack.
Was that your first and only panic attack?
First and only, and
Oh, you're.
ever since, I've locked in the mind differently now. You know what I mean?
That's a good
'Cause
thing.
you need to. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's something I'm working on right now, man. I personally grew a fear to that, which is known as an anxiety disorder. Once you fear anxiety, it becomes a disorder, and it's something that I've personally had to work on because it became really uncomfortable, like super super uncomfortable, and it made me actually move into hiding, into safety. And I am a very social person, as just mentioned before we started recording. You know, just like always out and about, weddings, events, etc., etc. And I've had moments in my life where I've had a panic attack and went into retreat mode because I'm like, I'd rather feel safe. But at the end of the day, what I'm learning now through my work in therapy and whatnot is that although you might feel sensations of anxiety or you might feel panic or whatever you might feel, you actually are safe. You just don't think you are because of what you're feeling. And that's not an easy thing to work through. So I don't want to, have someone that listens to this compare and be like, oh shit, it sounds easy. Or they might say, well, for me, it's not that easy. So it's not about a comparison thing. It's just, it is something that you could actually work on and work through. And it's a day by day process. But dude, it's real. It's real and it's scary. That's for sure.
no, for sure, for sure. I feel like we're 3 minutes in the conversation. I ain't even giving you a proper introduction to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Mitchell Report Unleashed podcast. You see how natural, organic conversations can happen on this show? Mr.
It's a
Matt, what's
beautiful
going
thing.
on, my man? How are you?
Dude, I want to say this on record while recording. I want to give you your flowers, and I know that I did this before we started recording. First and foremost, I want to express gratitude for the opportunity to be here chopping it up with you today. Again, just getting the chills saying this because your vibe, what you put out into the world is very powerful, and I hope that everyone that tunes into this realizes how powerful it is. And there's a reason people are listening to this right now. I want to give you kudos, congrats, flowers for 400 episodes in podcasting. I'm not trying to steal the introduction here. I think this is necessary, though, and I want to make sure that I'm doing this. There's a statistic out there, and don't quote me verbatim on this, but it says something along the lines of 97% of podcasts won't make it past 7 episodes. 97% of podcasts won't make it past 7 episodes. I suck at math, so I'm not going to do 400 divided by 7, 7 divided by 400, any of that. You are way past 7 episodes. You're at 400. That is a milestone that I want to say 0.1% of people will ever see. Like, what you're doing with the show is beautiful. So again, I'm giving you your flowers and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to be here, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that, and that's love right there. You know what I mean? So many, this whole journey for 6 years, there's a lot of emotion, but I don't show it. You know what I mean? on camera, off camera, but you see a lot of people through progression. You were talking about where you were at, last night and things like that. And there's a lot of people that listen to our show and they watch what they do. And when they see us, it's love. You know what I mean? It's this genuine line when you can feel it. And I thank you for saying that. You know what I mean? A lot of emotion I'm holding back. You know what I mean? Because it's like, what you're doing in this world. You're doing the work. You're doing God's work. I talk about a lot of different things on this platform. I have my different opinions and takes, but it's all in the good reason,
Absolutely.
You. Thank you.
Absolutely. 100%, man. Listen, at the end of the day, as a creator, I'm sure you understand this better than anyone. It's just like, first and foremost, like when you have someone listen to your show, that in itself is like such a feeling of gratitude. And then we can get caught up as creators not realizing how much greatness we are creating. Like you've created 400 plus episodes of greatness at this point. And of course, more than what you do outside of the show as well. Like it's a beautiful thing, man. So I'm glad we're able to start on that note.
No, for sure. Well, let's get into it. You talk about walking from Queens and Damon John and caffeine and get to that story, man. Like you did a whole bunch of stuff, man. Like how did that start? The whole Damon John conversation and internship and things like that.
Yeah, wow. I was in college. I want to just backtrack a second. I fucked up a lot, and I apologize if I can't curse. You could tell me now.
Curse, bro. Come on.
Okay, yeah. I fucked up a lot in life. I really did, and I'm not sitting here pointing fingers or pointing blame, but just lack of guidance, lack of lack of emotional support, lack of a lot of that. It led me to not being accepted into any high schools here in New York until my athletic abilities got me into where I needed to go. Getting kicked out of 2 high schools, getting arrested. All of this before meeting Damon, by the way. Just like a lot of turbulence in my life. And when I was in college, after failing out and going back, I started to get my act together. And the reason I started to get my act together was a few things without a doubt. I'm not going to sit here and point the finger at one, but ultimately I was in a college with people that had less opportunity than I did in life. No matter what I've been through, I realized that I was able to surround myself and create opportunity for myself to generate wealth at a very young age. In my late teens, early 20s, I was making a shit ton of money in hospitality, which got me surrounded with the likes of 50 Cent, Jadakiss, Ja Rule, had nothing to do with Fire Festival, Jersey Shore, all of that type of stuff. And the people I was going to college with didn't have those opportunities, and I saw it firsthand, and I said to myself, you know what, I need to make a change. So while I was working on myself and getting my grades right and doing all of that, I also became a student leader in numerous different capacities. And one of those capacities was becoming the president of the school's entrepreneurship club. Now, now looking back, I realized that I was just a club president, but at the time I felt like I really had, and I mean, I still do, like I felt like I really had a mission in that school, and it was to make a change. So much so that I would throw events with my executive board in 4-hour club, and the president of the school would show up. It was incredible. So one day I was in Dominican Republic on spring break during my junior year. My quote-unquote junior year, by the way. I was on the 7-year plan that only got me a 4-year degree. And long story short, man, I get a call from my school as I'm on the beach sipping a drink with 2 of my buddies out of country. And I'm saying to myself, I know I paid my tuition. Like, why the hell is this school calling me? Because I was paying my tuition myself, so I know I paid that shit. Like, why are you calling me? So I answer the phone regardless. And on the other end of the line was a lady that I had a great relationship with at the time. And she was like, hey, would you want to meet Damon John of Shark Tank? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Like, kind of saying to myself, why'd you even have to call? Like, you already know the deal. So he was coming to my school 2 days after I arrived back in the United States. And I said, you know what? Like, this is a great opportunity. I'm really stoked for it. I was one of 3 students to meet him. My college is actually in the neighborhood in which he grew up in here in Queens, New York as well. And he came to the school, like I said, one of 3 students. I was the last person to shake his hand in the green room before he went on stage. I shook his hand. He looked at me and he goes, "What the hell do they teach you here? How to break people's hands?" So it was kind of good vibes off the bat. Now I'm 6'5". He's smaller than me, and I didn't mean to shake his hand so roughly, but good vibes off the bat. We had a 5-minute conversation, and by the end of it, I said, "Damon, I'm going to work for you." He looked at me like I had 10 heads. I know I have one big head, but I definitely don't have 10. So the way he was looking at me was like, "Yo, you are crazy, bro. What are you talking about?" And he goes on stage, he does his fireside chat. I'm sitting, I don't know, second or third row with the school faculty and the students and whatnot. And in the back of the theater was my mentor that didn't attend the school, but I had brought him with me. So at the end of the event, my mentor and I meet in the middle of the theater, and we're standing like in the middle section where things broke off, and we're the last two to leave the theater. So we thought. Out of my peripheral vision, my left eye, I saw a gentleman walking up the side of the theater to exit that looked like Santa Claus. Now this took place in April, and I'm saying to myself, Santa ain't around in April, bro. Like, what's this guy doing over here? Heavy-set guy, white beard, bald. I say to my buddy, I'm like, "Yo, this guy looks so familiar." And I'm not saying he looks familiar because he looks like Santa. He just looked very familiar. It happened to be my buddy George Barnes, now my very good friend. At the time, I knew of him. We were friends on Facebook and stuff like that, but I didn't really know him, but my buddy did. And the reason I say all of this, and this is how crazy life is, life comes full circle. As mentioned, I was in hospitality for 7 years. In the beginning of the story, right? George Barnes was someone that we've worked with in the past. Lo and behold, George Barnes also worked with Damon John. We connected with George. He got me back in the green room. Damon saw me for a second time. Damon said to me, "Man, didn't we already take a picture? What are you doing back here? Why'd you cut the line?" So I was like, "Yo, I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep showing up." By the end of that event, Damon knew who I was. I said to George on Facebook, I'm like, "Hey, man, what do I got to do for you to get an internship? Like, what do I got to do to get my foot in the door?" He said, "I can't promise you an internship. I can promise you an interview." And I said, "I'm going to take that without a doubt." Took that interview, got an internship, interned for 2 semesters, turned that internship into a job, worked there for 3 years in total, I believe. And then furthermore, ended up getting interviewed by Damon for his show after I had left my job. Once in a lifetime opportunity, and it's a beautiful thing, man. Like I said, life comes full circle, and when you show up, you get rewarded. So we can go off of that.
I love feel-good stories like that. I do.
I appreciate it.
It shows you your product of success, being around a man of that caliber and the things that you can learn from him, right?
Yeah.
When you get into those spaces of somebody like that, like him, what's the electricity feel like?
That's a beautiful question. At first, when I was an intern, I had a humble arrogance to me. Now, it's a bit of a tongue twister, right? Like, it was a confidence that was like no other at the time in my life, and it was arrogant. I was able to work around celebrities for a large portion of my life professionally before I worked with Damon. So I already went into it having the mindset that he's just another human. He's a very special human, and I'm not taking that away from him. But I knew that if I put him on a pedestal, he might back away from me. And I realized from day one, even as an intern, I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to, and I'm not calling, anyone else out that I interned with and whatnot, but I never once put him on a pedestal. I always treated him like the kid from Queens that he is. And that allowed us to have a relationship like no other, right? And I actually just sent him an email on Thanksgiving thanking him, and I, said a lot of really nice things. But he's different, man. He's different. I've learned so much just not speaking, just listening. Sometimes not even listening, just watching, right? Watching him move, like watching what he says, how he holds his body posture, how he handles situations. His energy is on another level. I will say this, he works a lot, and he don't need to, but he works a lot. So sometimes, he is a human. He's not a robot. Sometimes his energy is down, But being around him, for me, for those years, it pulled me out of what I thought I was, and it showed me what I could be. And I think that is the short answer to your question. It's just being around him allows you to see what's possible for you.
Facts. I was at a comedy show, not to take away from the conversation, White Yardie, UK, white Jamaican stand-up comedian, viral sensation. And you speak about people putting people on pedestals. And I see a lot of people do this in the world that we're living in with social media. So when you get into spaces of people of influence, you know for them it's great responsibility. But there's so many people that see and they rant and they rave when they see their favorite comedian or social influencer. So I'm happy that you said that. You treat people human. Have good conversations. And I always say sometimes just listen. Just watch, view. Because you see the cadences. You see how the charismatic ability that they have. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I can get that just by seeing the clips and listening to parts of your show. That I'm like, Matt gets it up here. Not a lot of people do, right? And I get the same thing where some people may put me on a pedestal. They put you on a pedestal because they see us interview these plethora of people. Oh, wow, Rory, Matt, they're doing some big things. We get it. But the thing is, we still want to be human at the same time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually, there's a part of me, it happened last night too when I was at this wedding. A gentleman that I was with, he was complimenting the way that I look and then complimenting my show and exactly what you said. And to be honest, I personally dislike when people talk about it in a fame type of way or anything of that nature, because I don't want people to see me for accomplishments. Like I'm grateful for the accomplishments, but I want people to see me for the human, right? Like I knew the one gentleman that I was speaking with last night for years. In fact, he gave me my first ever public speaking engagement. And I want to make sure people see me as they've always seen me without, whatever else has been accomplished. Like I'm grateful for the acknowledgement, but it's the way that some people speak about it. And it's important to just see the human, man. And it's like when you're able to connect human to human, it's a beautiful thing. And people appreciate that, and
so true.
Yeah,
So true.
It's like nothing else.
And it builds into the podcast. I feel like with the first conversation, if I always make sure when I do my research on people, right? And I'll give transparency here. I'll give you your flowers. You've been on the radar, but you know how the world of podcasting works. There's so many things that go first, right?
Yeah.
So when you reached out to me, I was like, That's what I said, right? When I read the email, my phone, I said, Mr. Matt, you must have been in sync with me. You know what I mean? We go back to the first conversation when I talk about decoding, right? I said what decoding means. You have a podcast, Decoding Success, right? What, top 1%? Podcast?
Top 1% in the world, yeah.
All right, okay, all right. That's flowers right there.
I appreciate it.
How did you transition that podcast into who you are as the man?
Fuck, man, you ask good questions. You just gave me the chills, man. Like,
bro, I don't know, man. I do a thing.
No, it's a good question.
Oh, for sure.
So I've been doing it for 4 years. December 4th, 2018 is when we started. And man, I was just a young kid back then. Like, I look back and I'm just like, dude, I sucked. Like, I sucked. I think the show, I became the show, but the truth of the matter is, like, I just think as a person, and fuck, I don't even know how to answer this. It's such a good question.
However you want, man. However you want.
I'm trying to put the words that are coming to mind. It's a beautiful thing. I think that the growth that I experienced personally led to the growth of the show, because I was able to meet people, and I'm able to meet you here right now on a different level than I would have X amount of time ago. And the show contributed to that growth, because having conversations, right? And I'm going to be honest, I use my show as a mentorship tool. Without my podcast, I'm not sure if I'm able to talk to Mel Robbins. I'm not sure if I'm able to talk to Danny Morell or Damon or whomever, right? Like, I use it as a mentorship tool. So it's kind of like a cycle. Like, My personal growth fuels the show. The show's growth fuels me because I'm able to then meet people on a deeper level. I'm able to have conversations that I wouldn't be able to have, which leads me to grow. And it's just something that goes around and around and around and around. And where I'm at right now, we're going to connect in another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, another 4 years. And I'm going to laugh at what I'm saying here because the growth is nonstop and it's continuous because of this cycle, you know? So that's the best way for me to put it. And of course, you know, there's other factors that contribute to the growth, whether it be intimate relationships, books that are being read, career opportunities, conversations like this, friendships, so on and so forth. So I don't want to, you know, take away from any of that, but the cycle of the show, it's a beautiful thing how it kind of just moves like clockwork.
What do you think is the hardest part of podcasting?
The hardest part of podcasting?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Question I get too. I just laugh, kind of just chuckle to myself.
There's a lot, but I will say the hardest part of podcasting is doing the tedious, repetitious items that don't look like they're moving the needle, but are moving the needle. And I can give you plenty of examples, but that is actually the hardest thing. Those will be the things that get you to success, without a doubt. Those little tiny things that move the needle forward without you seeing the needle moving forward, that you have to do every single day, even on Saturday and Sunday, even on holidays, every single day. That's the hardest thing. And they actually say that's what success is, right? Just in general, like no matter how you define success, you will achieve your definition of success by doing the same repetitious thing over and over and over. But people don't want to do the mundane. People want to do what's sexy. And what's sexy is what looks good on Instagram, what looks good and might make you feel good a couple times when you do it, because you might be doing it once a week, twice a week, three, whatever. But it's the thing that you need to do every single day that actually makes you successful, no matter what your definition of success is. That's the hardest thing, to be honest. And so there could be numerous things that make it hard. For instance, maybe not feeling like you deserve success, which is psychological. The fact that, you know, you might say, well, I'm not in the mood for it today. Again, maybe something that's psychological. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and I'm sure a lot of that is something that I deal with, whether conscious or subconscious. But for me, that's what it is, man. Just showing up every day and doing the things that I don't necessarily want to do.
So true. So true. A friend of mine, shout outs to him, Damian Box, graphic designer down here, and works with a lot of just different people in city, out of city, all over the world. And one of the things he always said to me, even when we came out of pandemic, he goes, for you to show up every single week to do what it is you're doing shows the grind and the passion that you come with. You know what I mean? So Absolutely. For me, it's just like, I don't think ever I'm bigger. We've known the people that we've had come on our shows, from vocal to people that have monster following and big influencers and things like that. But we don't lose the identity of who we are. You know what I mean? That's the most important thing, you know. And sometimes you hear people like, you had that person on, that was such a good show, you did a relationship episode with that person. Like, yeah, guys, but I just know what to keep forward. I got to keep going forward. You know what I mean? Because if you don't stay hungry when you're at the top of the mountain, that's where you get comfortable. You know what I mean? And we see a lot of people that are successful stay hungry. It's when you get full, that's when you get lazy. When you get lazy, you're kind of like, yeah. And you're just kind of just putting shit together. You know what I mean?
Well, what's keeping you hungry? I mean, 400 episodes, like you could be, your plate could be all clean and you could be like, yo, I'm good. Like, what's keeping you hungry?
The passion that's behind this, the passion how I show up, the community, right? The biggest thing is I always say is 1% better, right? How do we get 1% better? I can't co-sign that. I can't trademark that because I'm going to be up against a whole bunch of other people trying to trademark the same thing. You know what I mean? But it's the 1% better attitude. You know what I mean? And knowing where I've come from, knowing that I've come from health and fitness through a pandemic, having this podcast from 2016, you're 4 years, I'm 6 years. You see what I'm saying? So we get this. You know what I mean? Having the lights of, I don't know if you know Mario Armstrong. You know Mario?
Of course I know Mario. Mario's my boy, bro. Mario's my boy. I'm about to get him on FaceTime for us right now.
Yeah, real time conversation. You can be like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, Mario's my boy, man. I met him while I was working with Damon.
Yep, Yep. And even one of those conversations I was back last year. Like, we had to record the episode twice. The first episode, I wish the first episode could have came out, but it was just a sound glitch, and I tried to salvage it. But the second conversation we had was even so much more rewarding, because it's like I knew this man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's such a humbling, bright, this person. I see him doing his thing. I'm just like, Jesus, man. It's nice to be in these areas, in this realm of podcasting. Like I said to you, podcasting is a pretty tight community. Pretty small. It's pretty small when you start uncovering the layers and stuff.
Absolutely. Well, you've been in it since 2016, right? Like that's 6 years. That's a long time, man. And I'm sure you're about to hit 7 years coming up. Like, you're able to see the landscape shift over those 6 years. Now, I mean, what I'm about to say doesn't really matter, but like, there's a lot more podcasts now than there were in 2016, right? Like, that number keeps going up. I forget how many podcasts there were in the world. I actually just saw that number, and they do account for the ones that are still in or are inactive. That's still accounted for. But at the end of the day, man, like, that's crazy to even think about, because you've seen this whole landscape shift. I can't necessarily speak on it the way you can, because you have an additional 2 years. And in those 2 years, I could only imagine how many more podcasts came about, because they just keep getting more popular, more popular, more popular. So it's crazy.
The first, people are going to go back now. The first 100 episodes, I was on a different tip. Like, I was ranty, I was breathy, I was saying whatever the hell I damn well wanted to.
Yeah.
Right? When I got after about 150, 200 is when I start finding the seasoning, right? Like, okay, I put a little salt here, put a little pepper here, put a little onion here, a little soy sauce here, and just cook it up, right? And now I've made it where I feel like I've gotten to my next evolution, where I have talking points. Sometimes I don't even look at the talking points anymore, right? Because I used to have it where the computer used to be in front of me. I used to read, and I could see my pupils like, he's reading off something. Well, it's prep work. You have to do it. Or you have a piece of paper right here. So now I just pick off the talking points in the conversation.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And that's a skill. And I say is intentional listening, which goes into knowing how to have great communication. Because not everybody can do that in this day and age, right? It's like people have this fear of talking, or fear of just getting to the spot, doing what it is they need to do, right? Because they don't want to look inward. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So they just turtle away like Franklin the Turtle, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. You know, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to be uncomfortable to get to whatever stage in life.
Exactly. I resonate with that so much, because I did the same exact thing. Now, you mentioned an exact number of episodes when you realized the shift. I unfortunately don't remember when that shift was made, but when I was finally able to stop like glancing down at the potential questions I may have had for a guest or something, and I was able to just communicate like we're doing now. And I also think, I mean, you know this firsthand because of the people that you've had on the show. Like, when you're having a conversation with a certain caliber guest, you also, you want your listeners to take away from it. You want to know like you're giving them value, but you also want the guest to be like, you know what, that was dope. And I think I personally got caught up with that in the beginning, where it was like, you know what, I want to look good in front of this person. Meanwhile, you look great when you're an intentional listener. Like, when you're an intentional listener and someone, you're able to jot down a quick 3 questions based off of what someone just said to you, and then use that as opposed to what you may have pre-planned. That's a whole nother level of podcasting. And like you said, that is a skill that's gained through this. I can't say that I thought I was an excellent communicator beforehand, but after podcasting was a whole different ballgame. Like, what you said resonated with me on a whole different level, because that is exactly what I've experienced. And I'm sure many people in the podcasting space have. And I don't know where else you can get that type of skill, like, or how you could develop that type of skill, because I got it through podcasting and I didn't get it through anything else I was doing,
And I think the other part of podcasting is that the ones that get into this, that want to go with the monetization button out the gate. It's all well and dandy. You can do that it's going to take some work. And I see it with a collaboration of like TikTok and people posting the clips. And I feel like a lot of people now are looking for that extreme take
Yeah.
that they think they can hope to get viral. Now, I don't know if you're a superhero guy. I've said it's like when Dr. Doom got the gauntlet on his hand, found a way to have multiple snaps.
Yeah.
That's what we got to do in podcasting. How do you have multiple snaps, multiple opportunities that are going to build you up, like the Tetris level? Not just shoot your shot one time and that's game over. You got to have it to be able to keep reoccurring and having that same mojo going.
That's not easy, man, and I've definitely got caught up in the past where I may have wanted to invite a guest on the show, and I'll be transparent. I just invited, and it's funny because I actually just referenced this in the beginning. Billy McFarland from Fire Festival is now out of jail. And I invited him on the show. I said, Billy, you want to hop on? And I was thinking about it. My intention wasn't to have the viral clip, but I know that a clip will go viral with Billy right now because he's fresh out of jail, and everyone watched those Fire Festival documentaries a couple years ago. People get caught up in that, and I'm one of them, right? Like I'm coming to everyone as a human being right now too, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm God. I'm not. I definitely get caught up in those things, and I think they're rather natural to an extent. Dude, I could tell you I've done this many times over. I mean, we want things to happen fast, like millennials, those young generations, man. Like, we want that instant. And whether it be, being that we have something in our hands that could provide us everything instant, from food to transportation to sex to whatever, like, we want success to be instant too. So at the end of the day, I can resonate and understand why people go about podcasting or anything like that, because I'm one of them.
And the thing is, even with content, since we're here, I watch a lot of content creators, right? Quietly from between TikTok, a lot of YouTubers, a lot of YouTubers that are in these talking spaces. One name I'm going to call, and I know people are going to be like, oh, Rory. I'll say Andrew Tate. I'm going to tell people this. It's not about what necessarily is what he's saying, but I love to get in the room with him because I know my caliber of questions I'm going to ask are not going to be the type of conversations that a Pierce Morgan or the Nelk boys, shout outs to them guys, are going to ask. Because they're going to ask the same verbatim conversations.
Yeah.
I want to open this man up on a whole nother conversation. Let's get a little bit deeper. I really want to get into headspace, right? Not why you say this, but there's topics of conversation that I don't think people ever want to get to with him to really understand why he's the way he is.
Yeah.
Is some of it extreme? Yes. Is some of it truth? Yes. Is some of it he has to flush out the last little, maybe 10%? Yes. But he's good at what he does. And you're starting to see it with people that have a high caliber thought process, know how to talk to him. You had a conversation with the same gentleman that interviewed him on, I think they went up to Romania or somewhere.
Oh, Patrick Bet-David.
That conversation, bro. That's the conversation that people need to watch, because you see who both of those people are. And I'm fans of both in some degrees. You know what I mean? Some stuff I hear and I'm just like, okay, let's just tea leave that.
Right.
But yeah, man.
Yeah, Patrick is next level. I had him on the show twice, and the first time, this is how embarrassing I was in the beginning, man. I was in my childhood bedroom with a messy bed, and at this point, I didn't record video. I was just, I didn't have, a nice background or anything, and I was getting very caught up in that. And Patrick was on the show. He was like, hey, man, like, listen, can you turn your camera on? I was like, I can, but I'm going to be honest, like, I look up to this guy, and not to put him on a pedestal, but like, I appreciate a lot of what he says and a lot of what he does. And I love the way he conducts interviews. Love. So I'm like, yo, I don't really want to put my camera on, but I'm going to put it on. I put it on. I had a messy bed that wasn't made and all of this, but we had a great talk. And then the second time around, same thing. But he is potentially the best interviewer I have ever seen, in my life.
Yep.
And this is another thing I'll add in here, and I'm sure you could resonate with this. Just from what you're saying, I already know you feel the same way. Watching other people interview adds to your interview skills.
Oh, man.
Not to get and this is something I did in the beginning. I would, in the past, I would watch an interview with a guest that I'm hosting to be able to get questions the host asked. And I had a full interview asking the same questions to a guest that someone else asked, and I watched the guest, and I'm like, damn, like he knew I was going to ask that question. Like he already knew. It was like he was in deja vu, and I'm like, yo, I was so young and just like, whatever it was, I did that, but now I'll watch the Nelk Boys. Not that they ask good questions. Nothing. I find them entertaining. I'll watch Impulsive. I'll watch Patrick Bet-David. I'll watch Lewis Howes. I got a lot of inspiration from Lewis. I watch how they interview. Tom Bilyeu, although I don't necessarily like the questions he asks, I think he's a genius. I'll watch all these people, and then I realize, like, I'm not watching it to get value from the guest's response. I'm watching it to study how they conduct interviews. And when I made that shift, everything changed, and I can tell you feel the same way because you're someone that studies. I could already tell.
There's a little piece of me with everybody, so I'll kind of give down the rundown of the guys I watch, the Joe Buddens of the world, right?
You like Joe?
So,
Okay.
I like Joe, right? So Joe Budden, the Colin Coherts, Skip Baylesses, the Don Cherry. Not a lot of people know that if you don't know hockey ties in Canada.
Sure.
And that's really the ones that I've really, not say idolized.
You didn't say Stephen A. Smith, so you're going with Skip over Stephen.
Oh, boy. Okay. Stephen A. owes me some time. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
That's one of my conversations that I would love to have because, again, different conversation I'm going to have because I really want to get into the mind area. That's why his book, when it comes out, I need that on audiobook. It will tell me everything I need to know because I think 30% of it's performative.
Yeah.
I'd say that, and I'd be honest, and I know people say that's a ballsy thing to say. No, I think 30%
performative, as in he's putting on an act. Camera.
Has to. That's how you get the. That's how you get the vibe. The people.
That's why he's on ESPN and
Exactly.
Skip's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's performative, and I think that that's when you look at the elements of the mainstream versus what we may do. Like, I saw the clip that you did. I got to listen to that show. Gabby, I don't want to butcher her name. Gabby Bernstein.
Gabby Bernstein, absolutely.
Gabby Bernstein. And then when you asked her the question, I didn't want to quote it again because I'm like in a conversation. Oops, sorry, I'm in a conversation right now, so it's like I don't want to butcher it. But when you asked her, what was it again? You asked her.
I believe I think I posted a couple, but I think the one you're referring to is, are all people meant to heal?
That part, when you listen to it, I know people missed it. And you kind of were like, really? And she's like, yeah. That moment there, that just 4 to 5 seconds changes the whole conversation because it makes you now think. You get what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's why I say to people is like, when you listen to these podcasts, you have some of them that are just kind of just put together, thrown together, like buttering 2 pieces of bread. I'm not knocking it, but it's not for me because I'm like, yeah, I'm losing interest. I want to be able to listen to a podcast to be able to take from it and say, okay, can I build other talking points on their conversation? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I never in a million years thought I would be a podcaster. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I had an intern when I was working with Damon. He's actually a very good friend and even a mentor at times. I'm actually having dinner with him on Tuesday evening. And, man, he did not shut the hell up about me having a podcast. He was telling me for years before I started. It's like, bro, you need a podcast. You need a podcast. I'm like, bro, like, when the hell do you think I have time for a podcast? I work full time. Like, having a podcast is a full-time job, and you know that. And I wish I started it earlier, because I love it that much. And like going back to the question you had asked, I mean, it just fuels so much growth. And when you're able to utilize something you love for growth, like this, it don't feel like work, Maybe some of the things do, but a lot of it don't, especially the interview part. Like, that feels like fun,
Growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Me myself, I have a 9 to 5, but I put another 15 to 20 hours a week onto the craft. You tell people this, oh, you do a lot of work. And I'm like, yep, you have the fixed mindset. I can just instantly pick it off. And it's like, I was in a conversation the other day, friend's birthday, and some topics of relationships came up, and I start shaking the room. People are like, they're drawn. They're like, you have this unique perspective. And it's like, it's not a unique perspective. It's having a growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is just going to be the same thing over and over again. It's like a hamster wheel. Right?
Yeah.
You ever watch a hamster run on the wheel? Eventually he's going to get tired and go off. Sip some water, rest, chill in the corner of the cage. But it's like, you have to expand upon that, right? I know that hamster could be in that cage right this second. How can I get a bigger wheel to run on? You guys got me on this little rinky-dink little thing. I should be deserving a bigger cage, but he can't go out there and get a bigger cage unless you go out there and build the bigger cage.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. It's a good thing, though, that friend group of yours received your mindset, your growth mindset, well, right? A lot of people shut that down. I'll never forget, I was on a rooftop in New York City at Gansevoort. They have, a lounge on the top of their hotel. I was with two buddies, both who come from wealth. One of them has a massive podcast specifically around his heritage and his culture. And the other is a city worker, and he does very, very well for himself. And I'll never forget, this was years ago. This was potentially close to 10 years ago. I said to them, I was like, I want an apartment right there. And I pointed to a building, like a high rise. It was gorgeous. And he looked at me and he was like, you better work really hard, or whatever he said. And it was just like exactly that. It was a fixed mindset. And I never judged him for it or anything. But some people, when you bring around your growth mindset and you speak of the possibilities you want for your life, they'll try and shit on it. And it's a good thing that you're around people that don't try to do that. And maybe they'll do it behind your back, which is a possibility, or, they'll say something under their breath or just hold it in or whatever the case is. But if you're around people that have a fixed mindset and are still open to hearing your growth mindset, that means they're definitely down to have a growth mindset, and something's going to click in their life to eventually get them there. And it might be the conversation you just had with them.
So how do you explain growth mindset to your audience?
I don't know if I do.
You do. Stop it. I'm going to hold you accountable on the show now. Come on, don't do that. Come on, Matt. Don't do that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think through the questions that are asked, people are forced to have a growth mindset. And I don't want to say that I force anyone to do anything, but for instance, right, like, do you think everyone's meant to heal? A question like that forces you to have a growth mindset because it makes you really think. Like, think of each word. I'm saying, do you think everyone is meant to? Meaning, like, that is the purpose of life to an extent. Like, you can't have a fixed mindset and think of a question of that type of depth. And those types of questions and the way that I try and go about my show in general, like, I might not directly say, oh, XYZ is a growth mindset, but through what I'm asking, it kind of brings it out in people. And whether it be from the messages that we get from the community, the DMs that I'm getting, or the reviews that we get, I can see it, right? And that's probably the best way to explain how growth mindset is even elaborated on through the show. It's more so me pulling them, going back to what I said earlier, just the same way Damon pulled that out of me, right? And I think that's a pretty cool way to look back, and I appreciate the fact that you even asked a question that made me realize that I'm kind of doing what he did for me with other people.
Somebody that has a certification like myself as a life coach, right? I'm not practicing because there's a lot that just happened as far as in and out of pandemic, working, podcasting, and stuff like that. So I said that the podcast is the free tool to give you whatever gems you want. And I wanted to rebrand the image of not being a life coach, but a lifestyle coach, because lifestyles through business, entrepreneurship, content creation, relationships. You know what I mean? So it's like dibbling and dabbling in those spaces because a lot of people need it, right? And you start to see how people resonate with some of the conversations. So what I've been doing now with the city since October 31st, which has been 6 years, is giving back to the city now. So talking to other people that are in the city that are doing cool things, right? Because I know that there's a need for it, and it's time to really showcase and highlight the people that this is the city that I'm from. These are all the cool people. welcome to the worldwide. Doesn't matter if one person's listening or you get 500,000 people listening. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Numbers are always going to be, formulated. However, it's not every episode somebody's going to listen to. You know what I mean? You could do a content creation episode and that person's like, I'll skip past that. You do a relationship episode, everybody's like, that's the one. You know what I mean? So it's like, it is what it is. So in that space, I realized there's going to be something in this podcast. If you listen to the whole thing, you listen to 5 minutes of it, you'll learn. You're going to learn something if you have the growth mindset. If you got the fixed mindset, that's when you're going to shut off the lens. That's when people are kind of like mad. They'll do the whole thing on Instagram. They'll unfollow you or they'll see you out and they'll like cold shoulder you because they're not at that area of life. And the thing is, if we had more people that produced a growth mindset, how do you think the world would look? But that's the reason why we have all these input this, input that. And you see how the conversations are being, because some people may not agree with content creation. Some people are like, well, I want to build a business, but I don't want to put myself on social media.
Yeah.
We're in 2023 almost. And you don't want to do that? I'm not saying your business is going to struggle, but you're going to have to do things a lot differently.
So I'll actually say this. I think the world needs people with a fixed mindset.
Okay.
I think the world needs people with a fixed mindset, and here's why. This can get really deep, metaphysical deep, and I don't necessarily have credentials to talk about that outside of my own beliefs and thoughts and whatnot. The world needs people with a fixed mindset because we need people that want to go to college to be accountants. And I'm not saying every accountant has a fixed mindset, but we need people in the world that are okay working behind the desk the rest of their life. The world needs everyone's purpose in this particular lifetime is letting the world function, right? And without that, if we have every single person in this world trying to be a podcaster, or if we have every single person in this world trying to be whatever it may be that a growth mindset might lead you to want to be, will we still have farmers? Will we still have nurses? Will we still have whatever? And I'm not saying, again, just for clarity, I'm not saying that every farmer and every nurse has a fixed mindset. That's not what I'm saying. But we all have a path. We all have a plan in this lifetime. And I don't know if there is another lifetime or not. I don't know. Like, I can't tell you if we do or we don't. But I think we need people of all sorts for the world to function properly.
Well said. In this podcasting journey, content creation journey, do you feel that there's people that you may have grown with that become now intimidated by you, or the new people that come into your space that are intimidated by you just because they know that you have that growth mindset, you have that intentional listening? Me, I say what I want to say, right? And I say it with love. It's always like that. It's always tough love, right? I'm never going to be disrespectful to somebody. Some people may look at it as disrespect, but if you're doing something, I'm going to be like, yo, I got to hold you accountable to a degree. Because I have to hold myself accountable with things that I believe in too, right? Do you ever think that you ever get into those conversations where people get a little intimidated?
I don't think anyone's intimidated by me, at least not from what I've seen, but I will say I get a shit ton of hate. Whether it's to my face or not, I get made fun of a lot, even from close friends. If they're just like, locker room talk type of thing with your boys and whatnot, they'll throw a jab and be like, oh, decoding success, and, make jokes like that and weird voices and whatnot. Get a shit ton of that. And it's not, depending on my mood, it's not always easy to eat, and sometimes it does anger and frustrate me because it's like, if I am trying to make podcasting my full-time gig, which is a goal of mine, at the end of the day, like, getting that kind of hate and getting no support from someone I think is a friend, it sucks. So again, it's not necessarily the intimidation I get, it's more so like the playful banter, which oftentimes comes from people with a fixed mindset that don't want, comes from people with a fixed mindset that potentially want to do what you're doing, but they don't do it. Whether it's because they're scared, they don't know how to, or whatever. That's oftentimes where that stuff comes from. So again, it's not necessarily an intimidation factor, and maybe there are people that feel intimidated. I try not to think that's the case, because I am a very social person, a very humble person. I will never not have a conversation with someone. It could be anyone. I mean, literally anyone. And I try and, you know, keep myself on that, you know, groundedness, that level of groundedness. But yeah, it's more so like the jokes, the hate, the you know, shame being thrown at me and whatnot. So that's more so what I get.
No, it's so funny you say about them DMs. I feel like people just want to get you into DMs just to have conversations. And I can always identify now, like, where's this conversation going to go? That's why I always label it. And here's a gem. Is it personal or is it business? Because if you're just going to come out willy-nilly without a hi, but you kind of mix it in with a hello, but you're asking me a random question, I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, I feel like you want to come on the podcast. You want to come on the podcast to say it, right? But then it turns into, like, crazy conversation in DM, and you're like, can I help you? Like, is this work or business? Like, what are we doing? Right. You know what I mean? And I think that's because some people, they look at what we do, they look at our talking points, and they may not know how to come out and maybe come out with their ask because they think you're going to get rejected. Heck, if you want to come on the podcast, I got to do my vetting on you. I got to see what you're going to bring to the table. You know what I mean? Like the other day, this lady goes, you know, what does it take to come on a show? And I'm like, it all depends. Like, what are we thinking? And she's like, well, such and such and such, such and such and such. I'm like, we'll be in touch after the holidays. You know what I mean? Because go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what do you feel like is the proper approach for someone to ask you to come on the show? I'm asking you this because I get pitched all the time. I only reached out to you just because I know you. We've been connected for a little bit. We've hosted the same type of people, some mutual friends and whatnot. So I'm just curious, like, what do you feel like is the best way to approach and ask?
So you're saying if we're going to go ask somebody to come on the show, or people are asking us to come on?
People are asking you. So if I'm not here right now and I want to ask you to come on the show, what do you feel like is the best way to go about that? And the reason I'm asking, to give you some context, is because sometimes I get offended by the way people ask me, because I look at my show as my baby, right? Nice. And, you know, and I'm glad you resonate with that. And sometimes the way people ask me is like, you don't even say hello before you ask.
So here's the tip.
You know?
Here's the tip. Here's where we'll go. Step 1, social digital currency. 2, pick a show. What episode? Like you did, right? And that's what made me, I had to read it again, and I read it again. I read it 3 times. I'm like, you picked out a specific episode, and it wasn't like it was somebody that was a monster guest. Right? Even though that doesn't matter, right? Because I treat everybody the same. But you have to be able to pick out something to show that also digital currency. Hey, I listened to this episode. This is how it made me feel. This could be my story in a tidbit, blah, 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 blah. You have an open spot. It's not like, yo, what's your email? I want to come on your show. I have a fashion brand. Okay. Thanks.
Right.
What are we doing here, right? So it's just showing that digital currency. And I think that you see that happening with the people that actually want to come on your platform, because it's not hokey. They're not trying to come for clout. Are they going to share the show? Some people like to share the show. Some people don't like to share the show. It is what it is, right? But you have to come with a peace offering of something, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to give? What are we going to take? How is this collaboration going to be, right? I think that's the biggest thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'll say this. After the show is done, me and Matt are going to have a conversation. We're going to bring it to the DM. I'm pretty sure there's going to be more conversations on the back end. That's it.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there have been times, you know, and listen, I get it. Some people just, like, do these mass outreaches, and it's like, you know what? That's not how you build a connection. That's not how you get on a show, you know? And sometimes I get offended because, like, it's like you don't recognize all the hard work that goes into building what's been built. Like, by you showing up with little to no effort, with what I've put in major effort, like, it's not on the same level. Like we're over here. Like we need to get at least a little closer with like what you're putting out there. That's why I ask. I mean, I've never really asked another fellow podcaster like, how do you feel about that, and like, what do you feel like is the proper way to approach you? But I appreciate you sharing that, because like I said, man, sometimes I've just been offended, and I'm like, you know what? Like, should I be offended? And I mean, I think to an extent I should. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, man. It's weird, but it is what it is.
I'll say this. The podcasting community is so tight-knit that when you treat people with respect, and it's funny, I had a guest come on. We haven't aired the episode yet because you're probably like me, and we batch record our stuff, right?
Sure.
And she goes, I had to ask somebody about you. I go, okay, what did they say? They said, he's legit. Don't worry about it. You're good. You guys will have fun. And that's the league that you need to be in. Are people going to vouch for you, right? Because people can see if you're operating off of ego, clout, or you have an agenda, right? And I feel like when it comes to collaboration, you can't have an agenda. You got to be wholesome about it, right? Heck, there may be, like I said, there may be one person that listens to this episode, and there could be tens of thousands to a million people that listen to the episode. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing too. I want to tell content creators, don't get infatuated by the goddamn numbers. Stop. It's just stop. Just put the work in. Put the work in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people are like, oh, I got this many followers. I got this many views. Doesn't mean anything. Because views needs to correlate to fans. And are your fans going to be there? Can you take your fans from pillar to post, from platform to platform? That's the big thing. It's the fans, not the views. And that's where we get this game disconnected.
Yeah, I got caught up in that when I first started. I was working with Damon, and what I did with Damon was essentially further develop his personal brand digitally. I built out a lot of his strategy from a content perspective for social. I didn't manage social, but we built out the content itself and made sure that we were getting what we needed from him. And I said to myself, you know what? Like, I'm doing this for him. I want to do it for me too. Mainly because I wanted to do more speaking, like whatever. I just wanted to get my feet wet. And in the process of doing all of that, man, in the beginning, all I cared about was that number, man. Like, how many views, how many this, how many that. Mainly because at that point, I was still so driven by external validation, you know, and I was making a big pivot in my life. I was going from being someone in hospitality, someone that's worked in nightlife for many, many years, which led me to be, you know, known to an extent in that space. And I instantly wanted to be known in a different space. And again, it goes back to that instant gratification. So I was just so caught up in the, like, what my numbers would look like. And there were many times I would lose followers that I've known forever. And I'm like, damn, like, we would party, we would hang out. Like, why are you unfollowing me? It made it really difficult at times because, like I said, just a lot of seeking of external validation, like understanding, like, hey, like, you're good because this person likes you. And man, that shift so needed to happen, and I'm glad I'm, you know, on the other side of that shift now. But I chased that for a while, man. I really did.
They say you change your social circle, friend circle, every 5 years, right?
Is that what they say?
Yep, I've heard that. I've heard that from a lot of just different people. I haven't fact checked it, but I believe it because I look at the pivot when you talk about, you have people that you think you went to school with, they follow your show, you see their post pop up, you're like, oh, let me just go to this thing. They don't follow you anymore. I think it's weird energy, so it's like, you don't follow me, that's cool. Bye. Peace. See you. Done. But then when they see you, it's like, yo, I see what you're doing. No. Because I remember this, right?
Yeah.
And it's love. It's always going to be love. You know what I mean? But I think that's like where the disconnect is with social media and content creation, right? Don't look at the numbers will come. Trust me, the numbers will come. I'll tell people this. When you think about when you put all your content on social media, in the last 6 to 8 months, I can confidently tell you if I accumulate all the views, I've already eclipsed over 1 million on every piece of viral content altogether. If I do the numbers, add them up.
Yeah.
It doesn't change who I am. They're views at the end of the day. I just look at it. It's views. It's the product getting out there. But I don't let it ever hinder me. I never let it slow me down. Because it's like, how are people going to talk about you, when you're not out there? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I ran into a person, we had a little bit of history the other night. She came up, she goes, "Hey, how are you?" I could have very well have been in my feelings. I'm going to say this on public record. I'm not going to censor it out. And it was love right there. She goes, "I'm sorry, this, that, blah, blah, blah." Kept it moving.
Yeah.
Right? You got to make people feel that there's still love. We may not see eye to eye, but it's still love at the end of the day. That's growth. That's the growth mindset. When you're in the fixed mindset and you're still in your feelings, you got to make peace with your past. You make peace with your past. That's how you get to the present. I tell people this all the time.
I'll say that there is another side to that, though, right? Because I've been on the other side of that once where, maybe not once, but just in general in the past, where you may think you're over something, but you're really just suppressing it. Right? It's like, I'll give you again, I'm keeping it real. Like the last girl I dated, fantastic girl. If I saw her out, I don't think it would be all love yet. Not that it can't be there, but yet, right? Because I am not like 100% over it, right? Like there is still some hurt because, man, she hit my core wound like no other. And my core wound has a lot of abandonment, has a lot of rejection, has a lot of neglect, and that is exactly what I got. So I'm still working on that, and I can come to you now from a place and admit that, as opposed to the younger me who would say, "Oh no, I am over it," and I can put a facade that shows love, but the truth is I was just pushing down what I felt, what I truly felt. You know what I'm saying? So I've been on both sides of that. What about you?
Well, that's the thing. This is, I got to be careful what I say because I feel like people are listening in. You want to open up the floodgates again. But when she came up to me, she was with her sister. And her sister's like, "Oh, I like the way like your tonality is." And she's like, "I'm sorry," which was love. And I said, "It's all good. Don't worry about it." But she goes, "Why would you want to date me?" I'm like, "Why?" Because I saw past the barrier. I saw past everything. And I made sure I reconnected a conversation was happening. I remember remember when that conversation we had? I said, "How did I treat it after?" She goes, "You accept me for who I was." I go, that's all you have to say. But I said, "You can now have a good night." It's peace, it's love.
Yeah.
If it was to ever revisit, that's not for me. That's the man upstairs. That's the universe.
Yeah.
But where I'm at right now, I'm over it. I'm good. You know what I mean? Because this is what I believe in, and this can be a learning tip for men or women. Whatever you go through, if it's a breakup, right? At the end of the day, breakups are going to be able to drive you and push you to the next level. With us, we're men. We put it into our craft. We see the success that comes from it, right? And then you start seeing the people, "Oh, wait, Matt and Rory, they're killing the podcast game. They're doing this." And you start getting those eyes back on you, and then people see you, and it's like whispering, and it's this. Put it inside yourself. Any heartbreak, any hurt, anything, put it in yourself and push past it, right? Because at the end of the day, that's where the reward comes. And then the right people find you. Right?
Absolutely.
Then the right community finds you. Then you have those powerful guests that come on and find you. And then you don't know what springs from those opportunities, those connections. Hey, fly out to here. I got a conference. Fly out to here. I got a book signing here. Oh, I'm going to be in your city in 3 weeks. All right, cool, amazing. It's a handshake, it's a photo, it's a dinner, it's connection. That's what comes back down to it. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't want to hear that, though. A lot of people are just in that space of just like, well, my heart's broken. I'm just going to sit there with Haagen-Dazs ice cream and watch Netflix. Or I'm going to watch Amazon Prime. I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to put myself in the gym. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to find a passion project. I'm not going to be the best version of myself. No, that's what I'm going to do. No. You got to go out there, go through the trenches. Trust me. This year, last 6 months, come on, man. I had a family friend pass away. There was transition with work. I had to transition that. That was in a whirlwind. I say you're either entering a storm, in the middle of a storm, or coming out of a storm. I'm fully out of the storm. We're in Christmas season. But I'm still pouring into myself because this is the reason why I show up. Podcasting is my passion piece. It's my first priority. Work may hear that and be like, "Really? podcasting your first priority? Yes, it is. Podcasting my first priority. And I can say that confidently.
That's a beautiful thing.
But I still put 100% into my work, though.
I resonate with that, man. That's a beautiful thing. That's powerful, and I very much so resonate with the, you're either entering a storm, in the storm, or getting out of it. I've been in all three, and I'm kind of getting out of a storm right now myself. So I definitely resonate with that.
And listen, man, whatever you're going through, just know I always say is that there's a person that's there. You know what I mean? We've all been through it. You know what I mean? And people ask all the time, "Oh, you single? Are you seeing anybody?" Why does that matter? Why am I going to tell you guys my personal life? You guys will know the personal life if a ring becomes involved. That's when you'll see. You may get that one photo of a ring, and that's it. And I'm not even going to tag her to the post because I don't need to have you guys all flock to who that person is. You know what I mean? Right. And that's just the best. That's the best part about it. You know what I mean? So
I hear that.
Yeah, man.
That's a beautiful thing. It's funny because last night when I was at the wedding I was attending, I said to a buddy that was sitting at my table, I posted a picture with the bride and the groom, a little selfie on Instagram. And I was sitting with a buddy at my table, and I said to him, I'm like, bro, I don't know if you know this, but whenever I post the picture with the bride and the groom, like I said, I've been to 3 weddings this month. Anytime I post a picture with the bride and the groom, the Instagram analytics blow up on my stories because everyone wants to know who the bride is. The guys want to know who's off the market, and the girls want to know who's getting married. Always. So I very much so resonate.
Weird.
Like when, I guess it's just, the time we're living in, but I understand why you wouldn't want to tag the partner.
Man, and I've had that. Remember, what's her name? Sarah. I don't want to butcher her last name. We did a podcast swap. She's over on this side of the border. And she called me on the podcast. So she goes, "You wouldn't post your significant other ever?" I go, "No. Why does it matter? What I post on social media is for my brand and my business. If you become the brand and the business, maybe there's a post. I'm not hiding you from society. I'm not trying to be like Drake. I was about to do a Drake reference, hiding the kids from the world and all that. No, we're not doing that. I don't need to hide.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. I'm not bringing you into that world because I already know what's going to happen. People are going to ask questions.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a time and a place for it. It's nice to show them your partner if they care about that. Like if that is a love language that they like to be shown recognition publicly. It's nice to, give them what they seek from time to time. But otherwise, man, that stuff can get messy, bro. And that could actually ruin a relationship too.
Yeah. And I think the best way to do it, somebody that does like relationship conversations, I think the best way to do it, if you're going to do that, just put it in the story. You know what I mean? I think main page where it's like access to everybody in the world. Because like when you put something in your story, like yes, other people can see it, but it's not like visible to the whole entire world. Especially if your pages are open. You know what I mean?
Right.
So somebody sees it. It's like all your followers. They see, oh, okay, oh, Rory's in a relationship. Okay, cool. Oh, she's a beautiful person. Yeah. Because I don't want to deal with those DMs. Oh, she's so good looking. Thanks, I know. That's why I choose.
Right. Right. No, I hear that. I hear that, man. That's man, that's the world we're living in right now. It's pretty crazy to think about, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, man. Before we listen, man, I feel like we can go longer, but time is money and money's time and all this good stuff. So, what's your vision for Matt 2020?
That's a great question, man. I think vision for me just 2023 next year.
Yeah, we already there, November 27th when we're recording.
Yeah. Ultimately, there's a few things, right? I'm getting the chills saying this. Number one is to find, let me not put so much pressure on myself, to start pursuing a life partner again. That's number one, and I in no particular order, by the way. Number one, I envision that I'm ready to an extent. There are things that the dust needs to settle. As mentioned, I am coming out of a storm. So the dust is still kind of up in the air on a few areas of life that I think as a man, I need to make sure that I have solidified to an extent before really, really getting serious. So I'll call it number one, pursuing a life partnership. Again, I don't want to put pressure on myself by saying, "Oh, I need to find a life partner." I don't think that's how love works. I would never go, go around saying you need to find someone. No, but I want to start pursuing that again. Number two, continuously making an impact through the podcast. I think that is, very much so like you. That's what I'm passionate about. I love conversations like this. I love receiving messages from people saying, this was beautiful, or thank you so much for this. I mean, I've had people literally reach out and be like, listen, I was in a really dark place. I was contemplating suicide, discovered your show, discovered your, your page, whatever, this, that, and the other. And it took me, out of it, and I'm now getting help. Like, things like that really, really make me feel good about what I do. More specifically, I want to break into the top 1%, right? Like, I'm in the top 1%, but I want to get into the decimals, like top 0.5%. And just for context, Joe Rogan's in the top 0.01%. Like, that's like the tippy top of the Mount Rushmore of podcasting. So podcasts for sure. Financially, man, I think there are things that I've had to recover from based off of operating out of ego for years of my life that set me backwards at times. And now, again, that the dust is settling, I'm finally finding ways for me to be able to build generational wealth. So that's another thing, is continuously pursuing that. And I'll cap it with number 4, just being able to be healthy, and being able to pursue the other 3 things that I'm mentioning. So if anything, number 1 should really be health. I've done a lot of things this year to revamp my health, whether it be personalized vitamins or recovering from injuries and ensuring that my body's actually functioning properly. So a lot of things like that I'm actually passionate about, because I want to make sure that I'm on point to be able to provide and be able to pursue what I need to pursue. But my vision is exactly that, those 4 things. And of course there's others, but like those are like the 4 main pillars that I'm like super, super focused on. And, whichever pillars get accomplished in whichever order doesn't necessarily matter to me, but like that's daily, like where I have my horse blinders on.
No, facts. I like that. I really do.
Yeah.
It lands for me and everything. Like, I get what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. I would say something totally different, but I like listening to you and I'm like daydreaming of everything you're saying, because I'm like, we have similar goals. I think for me, 2023 is all about not only doing remote, but having more studio access time, bringing the podcast to life in a studio or a setting, in-person setting.
Yeah, I resonate with that, yeah.
And I believe if we're thinking 2023, 2024, making this thing where I can travel, where maybe I come to you for part 2, part 3, you know what I mean? And we can sit somewhere and do that, because that's the next evolution of podcasting, in person. Multiple different camera lenses and stuff like that. So some unique ways to do that. I really want to get on some panel conversations with some topics that I have in mind, which I know is going to shake the globe. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Matter of time, and the whole life partner thing, I let it come when it comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not something that can be forced, man. I think in my last relationship, I put a lot of pressure on us as a unit, because I always said, like, I'm going to marry you. Like, I was making it known. Meanwhile, when looking back, that's actually really toxic. Like, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, you shouldn't actually do that. It's one thing to make it an intentional relationship and communicate that, hey, like, this is what I'm in pursuit of. Let's make sure we're aligned with what we're looking for. That's a different topic. But putting pressure on relationships, and even putting pressure on yourself. I know so many people that are like, you know what, my family wants me to get married, or I really want to be in like, you can't force that type of stuff, man. And oftentimes what that ends up leading to is you either, settling for something less than what you deserve. You finding yourself in a nonstop cycle of dating the wrong people. I think oftentimes you find the right person when you stop looking and you go inside. Like when you go inside of you.
Are you submitting your resume for the relationship episode I might be doing down the road again? Sounds
Not
like that you do.
necessarily, but no, I appreciate it, man. I mean, this is just the topic that I'm passionate about myself because I mean, I live it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. And after my last relationship, I was just like, fuck, like how did things go so wrong? How did things turn sour? I had to do, my inner research to understand, what it was that attracted me to a person like that and all of. So, dude, I mean, I also when you're in therapy, bro, you're a therapist at the end of the day, like you become a therapist, and people always tell me that. So, that's
Do you think? Let me ask you this because I think we're in the same maybe wheelhouse. Do you think it's because we're how we're growing? There's that disconnect in the love conversation or in the relationship conversation.
what do you mean by that?
So we're building our platforms. We have the podcast, and I think that whoever's beside us may see it and may not understand it. So they feel there's a disconnection. Because I feel like in
Interesting.
a lot of my relationships, this podcast has hindered a lot of things because I think a lot of people see how you're growing and how your
Yeah.
focus is where it is. And then there's that disconnect.
That's a
Is
great
he
question.
going to leave me? Is there, is he not going to take me on the journey? It's like, yo, you're here in the journey. And I've been completely transparent. In any relationship that happens, I'm like, listen, the podcast conversation comes up, and I'm like, listen, you listen to it or you don't listen to it. It's not
Yeah.
going to change anything. Support me. You want to have conversations? Oh, who do you have a guest? It's best for you to take interest in that. But if you don't want to listen to it, that's cool. But 9 times out of 10, what happens? The girlfriend's going to keep listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
And then they start asking you things about, so I listened to your episode. And I'm like, oh, God, what now? You know what I mean? But it's love at the end of the day. And it's like, you really do like this. And then they start taking a liking to it. But I think it's the ones that come in, see what they do, see what we do, and then they have their preconceived notions.
I think, first of all, that's a great question, first and foremost. And I'm going to answer this from personal experience. I think it's very important to do your best vetting process to understand if your life partner can accept what you are looking to pursue. And I actually got this from Patrick Bet-David. Patrick, and I don't want to quote exactly what he said, but he had told his current wife to read a book. He was going to do the same. They were going to come together. They were going to talk about that book, essentially to ensure that they both see the vision, that they both feel aligned in said vision. And I'm not telling anyone to go and do exactly that, but what I am telling people to do, and this is something I need to do a better job, is to be vulnerable enough to explain where you're at, but also explain where you're going. And to understand. Yeah, listen, you have to ensure that the person is down for that trip. Now, you have to also communicate that you might not know what is going to happen every step of that way to get from where you are now to where you want to go. But they need to be down for that ride, right? Like, what are the vows that go down and, when you're getting married? It's like through thick and thin. And they need to be able to take that ride through thick and thin. So if you find someone, again, with the fixed mindset and you have a growth mindset and they're stuck on fixed, there's a good chance they're not down for that ride. And they just want what's comfortable. Exactly. Exactly.
And that's the thing, I remember one of my relationships, it was getting to the back end. I knew it was going to end, right? I ended it. And it was way too late, but she made sure when she got to the podcast, she's like, I listened to one of your episodes, and she goes, I really understand who you are as a person now and what it is you want. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, you're too late. You should have done that. You should have done that months ago. You know what I mean? Because you just know, like us, we're so tunnel vision in our craft that we can't allow turmoil or excess turmoil to take over. We have work that we got to deal with. We have our passion with our podcast. We're wanting to do this full time. And maintaining a relationship, which you can do. But the thing is that you can't bring these limiting things. If you see us in the trenches building, and maybe we can only hang out for a couple hours a night, don't take that personal. Because here's the thing is this, when we're making it to the next level, you're going to be right here. You're going to be on the left or the right side, whatever side you want to be on, right?
Right.
And that's just it. And I think that's the reason why there's a lot of relationships that fall because you don't find the right support system. You know what I mean?
That's
And I
it.
think here's a little tip. Whatever you're pursuing, whatever you're doing, if it's content, entrepreneurship, you're working a 9 to 5, the person that you're with has to be the helpmate aspect to what it is you're doing. How are they showing up for you when you're after work? And it should be vice versa. That's the best tag team, right?
Right.
And go pro wrestling into this and say, if you look at some of the top 5 tag teams of all time, they were in sync.
Yeah.
Even though wrestling is part scripted, they were in sync.
Absolutely. Yeah, that needs to be symbiotic too, right? Like I just want to put that out there for the people that are tuned into this. It's not just the woman supports the man. It's also the man supporting the woman. I know we're talking, from a creator perspective, and it ain't easy to find, but I think, the more you turn inward through repetition and experience, you get closer and closer to finding that person because you stop looking for places are no good for you. And that, at the end of the day, that's where you find your person,
Absolutely. Matt, I always ask a question to all my guests. It's a dreaded question that a lot of people answer different. And it's a household name now that we do, the Q&A part. It's one question. How do you become 1% better?
Showing up daily and doing the tedious things, just like I was mentioning earlier, the mundane. The mundane gets you 1% better, guaranteed. Understanding what your mundane, what your repetition is important. If you don't know that, that's where you start. But once you do know that and you need to move that needle forward every single day, yes, the sexy thing definitely moves the needle forward. But I want to tell you this, the sexy thing doesn't always last, and it could oftentimes move the needle backwards. And that's okay. The needle does move backwards sometimes, but it is the mundane, the repetitious thing you need to do every single day that gets you 1% better. That's the first thing that came to mind, and it's something that I'm personally living by. It's something that makes me feel like I'm productive every day as long as I ensure that I am doing the mundane, repetitious tasks that I truthfully don't want to do, but I know I need to do.
No, that's lover, man. Listen, plug that show, by the way. Also,
I appreciate that, man.
Plug that show, man.
Yeah, Decoding Success. Like I said, been doing this for 4 years. Ranked in the top 1% of the world, and out of all podcasts, I think there's 7 million total podcasts in the world. Potentially closer to 8 million now that we're having this conversation. Conversations with Mel Robbins, Patrick Bet-David, Grant Cardone, Gabby Bernstein, the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicola Pera. Things get deep, man. We have real conversations.
Natasha Adamo too.
Natasha Adamo, yeah, Natasha's great. Natasha's fantastic. Really good people. I appreciate it. I appreciate it, man. So yeah, we have a good time with it. Would love to have anyone, hop on over, check us out, see what we're doing. But I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I will express gratitude again and give you your flowers. 400 plus episodes, bro. That's no joke. Like, I think people need to hear that once more, because it goes to show that you are not only a master of your craft, but how much you care about your craft to continuously show up, produce content like our conversation today. Have fun with it. Just have an open conversation, raw talk. And that alone, I just want to thank you for what you're doing for the world, and also allowing me to be a part of it.
Dude, that's love right there. Thank you. Honestly.
I appreciate it, man.
And I'm telling you, you can jam at any time. So let me know. Let me know when you want to come on the podcast. That. But I might be knocking on your door for a panel conversation soon. So
we got to do something, man.
You just make sure you come. You come back.
That would be dope.
I do appreciate you, man.
Likewise. The feeling's mutual.